Stephen Colbert has interviewed hundreds of celebrities over the years. Most of them smile politely when asked uncomfortable questions and deflect with humor. But last night, Pedro Pascal broke that pattern in the most spectacular way possible. When Colbert kept pushing questions that implied Pedro's casting in The Last of Us was about diversity quotas rather than his Emmy-nominated talent, something snapped. And what happened next is the kind of moment that will define the conversation about race, representation, and respect in Hollywood. This isn't clickbait. This isn't exaggerated. This is a Chilean-American actor finally saying what needs to be said about microaggressions in the entertainment industry. Make sure you're subscribed because we're breaking down every powerful second. First of all, please don't forget to like our video and subscribe. Okay, so the Late Show studio's absolutely packed. Cameras are rolling, audience is hyped, and here comes Pedro Pascal walking out. The guy looks incredible. Burgundy velvet blazer over this simple black tee, and that signature salt and pepper hair that's just effortlessly perfect. At 49, Pedro's one of those guys who wears age like it's an accessory. The gray streaking through his dark hair, the distinguished beard, those lines around his eyes when he smiles. It all just adds to the vibe. Pedro Pascal, everybody, Colbert announces, and the place erupts. Cheers, applause, the whole 9 yards. Pedro gives this humble little wave, settling into the guest chair with that warm smile he's known for. But here's the thing. If you've watched enough of these interviews, you can see there's something else there. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe just that look someone gets when they've been answering the same promotional questions for 3 weeks straight. Whatever it is, it's there. Thanks for having me, Stephen, Pedro says. His voice has this quality, warm, but there's an edge underneath, like he's done this dance 1,000 times. Are you kidding? We're thrilled, Colbert shoots back, all energy. The Last of Us Season 3 is finally here and people are absolutely losing their minds over it. And Pedro lights up at that. You can see it, genuine enthusiasm crossing his face. Yeah, it's been an incredible journey. Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann have created something really special with this show. Getting to bring Joel back for this final chapter? Man, it's everything I could have hoped for. The audience murmurs appreciatively. This is what they're here for, right? Beloved actor talking about his acclaimed show. Standard late-night interview stuff. Everyone's comfortable. Now for the 3 people on Earth who somehow haven't watched, Colbert continues. Tell us what fans can expect from Season 3. Without spoiling anything, Pedro leans forward, getting animated. This season really explores the cost of survival. What happens when the choices you make to protect the people you love end up destroying everything around you? It's dark, it's brutal, and honestly, it's probably the most emotionally demanding thing I've ever done as an actor. Emotionally demanding, Colbert repeats, and there it is, that shift. It's subtle, but if you're paying attention, you can hear it in his tone. That's interesting, because I think a lot of people would say that casting you in this role was emotionally demanding for the network too. Pedro's smile freezes. Just for a beat, but it's noticeable. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Stephen. Well, Colbert leans back in his chair, getting comfortable like he's about to make some kind of point. HBO's been pretty vocal about their commitment to diversity and representation in their casting. And Joel was originally written as this very American character. Texas, rugged, you know the type. So casting a Chilean actor in that role? Chilean-American, Pedro corrects, and his voice is still polite, but there's steel underneath now. Right, Chilean-American. That was a bold choice, wasn't it? The audience has gone quiet. That weed tension you can feel when you know something's about to go sideways, but you're not sure how yet. Bold, Pedro repeats slowly. You can see him choosing his words carefully. I'd say it was the right choice, but I'm curious, what makes you think it was bold? Colbert does this thing where he holds up his hands like he's being totally reasonable. I'm just saying, there's been a lot of conversation in Hollywood lately about representation quotas and diversity initiatives. And The Last of Us is a massive franchise with a huge built-in fan base. So when you cast someone who brings that Latino perspective to the character, Stephen, Pedro cuts him off and his voice has dropped. Not louder, but heavier somehow. Let me stop you right there. Are you asking me if I was cast because I'm Latino? No, Colbert backtracks, but not really. He's still making his point. I'm saying that representation matters, and networks are under a lot of pressure these days to what? Pedro's leaning forward now. To cast talented actors? Because that's what they did. I auditioned for this role multiple times. I screen tested. I worked with Craig and Neil for months before we even started filming the first season. Of course, Colbert says quickly. And you're incredibly talented. The Emmy nomination speaks for itself. 3 nominations in 1 year, actually. That's historic. But you have to admit, having a Latino actor in such a prominent mainstream role, that's significant for representation in the industry. It's significant that I'm a good actor, Pedro says flatly. That should be what's significant here. You can see Colbert trying to find his footing. Sure, but in the context of Hollywood's historical lack of diversity. But what? Pedro's not letting him off the hook. Say what you're actually trying to say, Stephen. I'm trying to say that diversity casting is important, Colbert says, getting a little defensive now. And I think HBO should be commended for taking that kind of risk with such a beloved character. Risk. Pedro repeats the word like he's tasting something bitter. You think casting me was a risk? Well, Joel is such an iconic video game character, and the fans are very particular. And you don't think a Chilean-American actor can portray an iconic character? Pedro asks. His voice is still controlled, but there's something building underneath. The studio is dead silent now. This isn't playful banter anymore. This is something else entirely. I didn't say that, Colbert protests, and his face is starting to flush a little. You didn't have to say it directly, Pedro responds. You've been dancing around it since the moment we started talking about the show. Bold choice, diversity initiatives, taking a risk. Do you know what all of that actually means? It means representation matters in Hollywood, Colbert insists. No, Pedro says, and there's this edge in his voice now, sharp. It means you think I was cast because of where my parents were born, not because I spent 20 years doing theater in New York, not because I've worked on dozens of shows and films, not because I understand Joel's character on a fundamental level. You think it was about checking a diversity box. That's not what I'm saying at all. Then what are you saying? Pedro's voice rises for the first time. Because from where I'm sitting, you've spent the last 5 minutes implying that my Emmy-nominated performance in one of the most critically acclaimed shows on television was some kind of diversity quota fulfillment. Colbert shifts in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. I think you're being overly sensitive about this. Overly sensitive? Pedro actually laughs, but there's zero humor in it. That's perfect. The Latino actor is being overly sensitive about being told his success might not be entirely his own. That's a great look, Stephen. I never said your success wasn't your own, Colbert snaps back. You said HBO took a risk, Pedro reminds him. You said casting me was bold. You framed my ethnicity as the story here instead of my performance. And now when I point that out, suddenly I'm being overly sensitive? I was trying to acknowledge the importance of representation in Hollywood, Colbert tries one more time. By questioning whether I earned my role, Pedro's voice cracks a little with frustration. That's the thing about microaggressions, Stephen. They're designed to be deniable. You can spend an entire interview implying that someone only got cast because of their ethnicity. But the second they call you on it, suddenly they're the problem for being too sensitive about race. The audience is completely frozen. Some people look deeply uncomfortable. Others are nodding along. This is absolutely not the interview anyone expected tonight. Colbert tries a different angle, his voice taking on this careful tone. Look, I'm simply pointing out that Hollywood has historically underrepresented Latino actors in leading roles. And you think the solution to that historical underrepresentation is to question whether we actually earned our roles when we do get cast? Pedro's not having it. You want to talk about representation? Let's actually talk about it then. I'm proud to be Chilean-American. My parents fled a military dictatorship when I was 9 months old. My family sought political asylum in Denmark, then came to the United States. I grew up between two cultures, and yeah, that's absolutely part of who I am. He's really going now. You can see decades of frustration starting to pour out. But you know what else is part of who I am? 20 years of studying acting at NYU and on stages across New York. 20 years of auditions and rejections and tiny roles where I had maybe 3 lines. 20 years of waiting tables and doing Law and Order episodes and perfecting my craft. And when I finally land the role of a lifetime, when I finally get the chance to show what I can really do, the first question people want to ask is whether I was cast because of where my parents were born. I'm trying to acknowledge the importance of Latino representation in media, Colbert attempts. No, Pedro cuts him off hard. You're trying to make yourself feel progressive by pointing out that I'm Latino, while simultaneously suggesting that maybe, just maybe, that's the real reason I got the role instead of my talent. You get to pat yourself on the back for talking about diversity while undermining the actual Latino actor sitting right in front of you. That's not allyship, Stephen. That's performative progressivism. Colbert's face is getting redder. I think that's completely unfair to my intentions. What's unfair, Pedro says, and his voice is shaking slightly with controlled anger now, is being told your entire career that you're too ethnic looking for some roles, but not ethnic enough for others. What's unfair is changing your last name from Balmaceda to Pascal because your agent thought it would make you more castable. What's unfair is working twice as hard as everyone else and still having people question whether you actually deserve to be where you are. I think you're taking this the wrong way, Colbert says, and you can see immediately that this was the wrong thing to say. Pedro just stares at him, doesn't say anything for a long moment, just stares, and in that silence, you can feel the entire energy of the interview shift. Stephen, he finally says, voice quiet, but absolutely intense. Are you seriously sitting there telling me I'm taking it the wrong way? You've spent this entire interview questioning the legitimacy of my casting in The Last of Us. You've implied that HBO took some kind of risk by choosing me. You framed my ethnicity as the interesting story here instead of my performance. And now you're telling me I'm misunderstanding your intentions? I was trying to celebrate diversity in casting by suggesting I was a diversity hire. Pedro's voice rises again. That's not celebration, Stephen. That's condescension wrapped up in progressive language. And honestly, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of every interview turning into a conversation about my ethnicity instead of my work. I'm tired of being made to feel like I should be grateful for being cast, instead of confident that I earned it. I resent that characterization of my questions, Colbert says stiffly, defensive now. And I resent being treated like my ethnicity is more interesting than my Emmy nomination. Pedro fires back immediately. I resent being asked about representation quotas instead of my acting process or my relationship with the character. I resent the implication that being Chilean-American somehow makes my success questionable or requires extra explanation. Nobody said questionable. You said risk, Pedro reminds him, and his voice is like ice. You specifically said HBO took a risk casting me. Why was it a risk, Stephen? Go ahead, spell it out for me. Colbert opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. He's trapped, and he knows it. It's because you don't think a Latino actor can carry a mainstream American television show. Pedro says it for him. That's what risk means in this context, whether you want to admit it or not. And the fact that you can't even say it out loud, that you have to dress it up in language about diversity and representation, that's exactly the problem. The audience is so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. This has gone way beyond uncomfortable into something else entirely. You're putting words in my mouth, Colbert protests, and there's an edge in his voice now too. I'm saying out loud what you've been implying this entire interview, Pedro counters. And you know what the worst part is? You probably genuinely think you're being supportive right now. You probably think talking about diversity initiatives and representation makes you one of the good guys. But what you're actually doing is othering me while claiming to celebrate me. You're making my ethnicity the story while pretending it's about progress. That's not fair, Colbert says. What's not fair, Pedro's voice cracks slightly, is that I can't just be an actor who gave a great performance. I have to be a Latino actor who gave a great performance, despite being Latino. Or maybe because Hollywood needed a Latino actor. The talent itself is never just allowed to stand on its own. The tension in the studio is absolutely unbearable now. Crew members behind the cameras are exchanging looks. This has gone completely off the rails. I invited you on this show to talk about your work. Colbert tries to regain some kind of control over the interview. No, Pedro says bluntly. You invited me on this show to talk about my ethnicity in relation to my work. There's a massive difference, Stephen. If you'd invited a white actor here to discuss The Last of Us, would you be asking them about diversity quotas? Would you be talking about bold choices and risks and representation? Colbert doesn't answer. Can't answer, really. That's exactly what I thought, Pedro continues, because when white actors get cast in roles, nobody questions whether they earned it. Nobody suggests their ethnicity played a factor in their casting. Their talent is just automatically assumed. It's taken as a given. But for me, for Latino actors, for actors of color, we have to constantly prove we weren't just diversity hires. We have to justify our presence in every room we walk into. I think you're being incredibly unfair to me right now, Colbert says, and his voice has an edge of anger. Unfair? Pedro actually laughs again. Stephen, do you have any idea how many interviews I've done for this show? Do you know how many times I've been asked about being Latino instead of being asked about Joel Miller as a character? Instead of being asked about the father-daughter dynamic with Ellie? Instead of being asked about working with Bella Ramsey or the incredible production design or literally anything about the actual craft of the show? He's standing up now. Not aggressively, but deliberately. You can see him reaching for the microphone clipped to his lapel. It's exhausting, Pedro continues, and his voice is thick with emotion. It's exhausting having to defend your right to exist in a space. And when you finally push back against it, when you finally say enough is enough, suddenly you're the problem. Suddenly you're being difficult, or overly sensitive, or taking things the wrong way. I was trying to acknowledge the importance of representation in Hollywood. Colbert tries one more time, by questioning whether I deserved the role that I worked my entire life to be able to play. Pedro's voice cracks. Don't you see how that's the opposite of supportive? Don't you see how that undermines everything you claim to be celebrating? He's got the microphone unclipped now, the small lavalier mic in his hand. Pedro, come on, Colbert says, and there's a note of real concern in his voice now. Maybe he's finally realizing how badly this has gone. Let's take a breath here and reset this conversation. Reset it to what? Pedro asks. To the part where you imply my talent is secondary to my ethnicity? To the part where you suggest HBO took a risk by casting me? There's no resetting this, Stephen. You've made it very clear what you think about why I got this role. That's not what I think at all, Colbert insists. Then why did you ask about it? Pedro challenges. If you truly believed I was cast purely on talent and merit, why bring up diversity initiatives at all? Why mention representation quotas? Why frame my ethnicity as part of the casting story, unless you think it played a significant role? Colbert doesn't have an answer. You can see it on his face. He's stuck between doubling down and backing off, and neither option is good. Here's what I know, Pedro says, setting the microphone carefully on the chair. I know I gave everything I had to The Last of Us. I know Craig and Neil chose me because I understood Joel Miller on a deep level. I know the critics and the audience have responded to my performance, not to my ethnic background. And I know that no matter how many awards I get nominated for, no matter how good the reviews are, there's always going to be someone like you asking if maybe it was really about diversity. He straightens his burgundy blazer, takes a breath. You know what's sad? Pedro asks, and his voice has gone quiet again. I actually used to respect this show. I grew up watching you on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. I thought you were someone who got it, someone who understood nuance and complexity. But tonight Tonight you showed me that even the so-called good guys can't see Latino actors as just actors. We're always Latino first, actors second. Pedro, please, Colbert says, and he's standing now too. The professional facade is cracking. I don't think you're being fair to the spirit of my questions. And I don't think you're being honest about the implications of your questions, Pedro responds. But hey, at least now we're both disappointed in each other. He turns toward the edge of the set, then pauses and looks back. For what it's worth, Pedro says, I really did come here excited to talk about the show. About Joel's journey. About the incredible work the entire cast and crew put into Season 3. About what it means to bring this story to a close. I could have talked for an hour about the craft and the character and the challenges of the role. But you weren't interested in any of that. You wanted to talk about diversity quotas and bold casting choices. So congratulations, Stephen. You got your viral moment. I hope it was worth it. And with that, Pedro Pascal walks off the Late Show set, leaving behind a stunned audience, a flustered host, and what will undoubtedly become one of the most talked-about moments in late-night television history. The cameras stay on Colbert as he stands there, clearly struggling to figure out what to do next. His face cycles through emotions: confusion, anger, embarrassment. After what feels like an eternity, he turns to the audience with a strained attempt at a smile. Well, he says, his voice tight and uncomfortable, I guess we're going to need to cut to commercial a little earlier than planned tonight. But everyone watching knows that no commercial break can fix what just happened. The conversation about race, representation, and respect in Hollywood has just been blown wide open on live television. And nothing's going to be quite the same after this. So there you have it. The complete breakdown of how Pedro Pascal walked off The Late Show after one of the most explosive confrontations about race and representation in late-night television history. What started as a routine promotional interview turned into a powerful moment about microaggressions, diversity casting, and the constant questioning that Latino actors face in Hollywood. Was Pedro right to walk off? Or should he have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that subscribe button for more celebrity interview breakdowns, and let me know what other confrontations you'd like me to cover. Because if this taught us anything, it's that sometimes the most important conversations happen when people stop playing nice and start speaking truth.